I hope everyone is feeling good and getting ready for their long weekend. Hi, Sharon, welcome. Um, and what I'm finding, especially today, is people getting anxious for tomorrow and the news of what's going to happen. And is there going to be any light at the end of a tunnel, as they're now starting to talk about the light at the end of a tunnel? And I heard that Leo was saying today, we're still in a tunnel. So what's that going to mean? And we were talking during the week about how, from an emotional point of view, when we leave ourselves go forward, it's usually about anxiety. Looking back into the past usually brings up the emotion of regression, depression, and challenge. Being in the present is the challenge of just taking what we have for now. So right now, for now, I'm looking out my window and it's dry, and the forecast yesterday was for it to be bucketing rain all day for every minute up until tomorrow, and the same tomorrow. So it looks like in about 40 minutes I'll get to go for a walk. So that's great for right now. But what I find is that when you project yourself into the future, the challenge is you could write it off. So I could have today written off. I could get up today in bad form thinking like I'm not going to be able to do stuff that I'd like to be able to do. When in fact, all you can do is put yourself into the position of being ready to take it as it goes. I heard a brilliant description today. I was talking to a guy today and he was talking about how he was on a meeting today. And he said, he just said he just felt funny, like, and we weren't even using the word emotion. He said, like, emotions were just all over the place. He said, I was like a bulldog chewing a wasp. And like the image of it, and he said, like, Jesus Christ. He said, I didn't know what was going on for me, but like, and he said, I just had to realize, I just had to stand back and just feel like it's a thing of everything. It's like, it's about being cooped up. It's the fact that I can't do things as quickly and as nimbly as maybe I would normally. It's the fact that, that I have to deal with this in the way I'm dealing with it. And lots of times it's just fantastic and it's great. And most of the time I get on with it and I'm happy out. And then there are times when it just hits you. So a huge thing in the dialing down is having routine that allows you to kick out. So as we dial down today, I'm finding that the biggest challenge people are having is walking from one room into another and one environment into another and no break in between. What do I mean by that? So if I go to dial down today, I'm in the room where I'm on my Zoom calls and where I'm doing my business, and then I walk from that, and 6 feet away is the dining room, is the kitchen, is the other room, and I'm into life, another life, and there's no break. There's no wind out. So it's even finding that way of doing that in your day and giving yourself a routine that says, this is how I start myself up. This is how I wind myself out. So one of the tips that I came across, and it's like, we have the MyNow initiative is amazing. And during the day, we have all the things going on. We have the girls doing yoga and Pilates, which is fantastic. And we had meditation. And I know lots of people, will find ways of getting into that. But a simple tip in terms of emotion that I've come across is an app called 10%. And 10% is the app as a result of a book written by a guy called 10%. And the guy was a news announcer on CNN and had a breakdown on air and literally like had a shit fit and realized after that, when they got him off air and kind of covered up for him, that like serious stuff was going on. So part of his rehab for himself was to get into meditation, something he had never done. So he wrote a book called 10% to Happiness. And it was a New York Times world bestseller and all of that. And he has an app now. And the app is, you can download, if you go to 10%.com, the meditations are free. And their guided meditations are free, especially for now. So it's like the app Headspace. But the amount of people I meet, I was on a call similar to this last week, and there was a group of people on it, and some of them are professional coaches and trainers and that. And one of them said, like, I just can't get that meditation crack. Like, I've been trying to do stuff forever and I just can't get into my head. And my head is just obviously too wound up. So I recommended this 10%, and they rang me back end of the week to say, holy God, this is amazing. So simple. Who'd have thought? Like, and it starts with like a 4-minute meditation and giving you tips on how to get that, and literally a guided meditation on it. So well worth doing. And it's my simple tip for you for this afternoon in terms of wind down and wind out. So 10%.com, and you can go in there and you can listen to the meditations at your ease and at your will, and it's free of charge, easy to do, and it's all about taking steps. So where I heard of this first was a guy telling me how he had come to this, and over the course of like 3 or 4 weeks, he was saying he's reaching Zen state. And this is a guy who wouldn't be into the orange robes and shaving your head and that. And he said, like, you know, and if someone had come to me, like kind of showing me that kind of wellness stuff outside of this, but he said, I came across this as a kind of as almost like a business referral. And the fact that this guy was a newscaster and he wasn't a monk and he wasn't, you know, some guy who'd come down off a mountain, I could kind of accept it. And then that's it for a lot of people, is just the accepting of, you know, these things are there, they work for a reason, but generally the way they come to us is in a package that seems to be unattainable. You know, so it's like, I don't have that 3 hours to go in, like this guy is just showing you how to do it in 4 minutes. The thing I've come to learn as well from a meditation point of view is 12 to 15 minutes is the max time to do it. So again, in a busy life, that's a cool thing to cling into, because when I came across the likes of this stuff first, going back in my journey, like 30 years ago, and that, you know, just like, again, I was looking at Zen-like people who'd spend an hour meditating, but they really wanted to be meditating all day, every day. And I was like, Jesus, I need to earn the money and run the life, and I have young kids and I don't have time for that stuff. But 15 minutes, oh, that's a different prospect. So I would say that to 10%. Looking at how you transfer your energy at this time of day, and what are you bringing, how are you bringing that to the table? So when I was a younger man and my kids were small, Alison said to me one day, you know, do you know how you come into the house? And I said, how do you mean? She said, like, so we lived 11 minutes exactly from where we're living right now, back in Stillorgan in Dublin. So now I live in Wicklow, so back in the N11 in Stillorgan. And she said, we can hear the key turning in the front door. And by the time the front door closes, you're bursting into the kitchen. And I said, go on. She says, yeah. And she said, it's like a hurricane. So you come into the kitchen, you grab the post. How's everybody? How'd your day go? What's the crack? And she said, like, if you look at the two kids, it's like there's a tornado in the kitchen. This is 6:30, 7 o'clock usually. They're going to go into bed in the next hour. They've been at home since anything from like 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, depending on the age. They've totally unwound. And you're hitting the house on speed. And I was hitting the house on the speed I was at work, the speed I was living. I said, like, would you just chill down? I said, absolutely. And I came across a very simple technique then, where this lady showed me. She said, like, you know, do you ever stop before you go home? And I said, how do you mean? She said, you know, I encounter most busy people who are busy in work. They're busy on their way home, and they're busy when they get in home. And they're usually driving the people they live with bananas, because the work person comes in to the home person. So she said, just stop your car 5 minutes around the corner, 10 minutes around the corner from home, and just unwind, just decompress, just stop. Stop taking calls, stop running your life, just stop, just breathe, and then come in home. And of course, that aligned with what Alison was saying to me, like, you're coming in like a tornado. And it changed one part of me. No, that's not to say aren't I perfect, but it was just like, I was totally unconscious of that. I was totally unconscious of the energy I was bringing from the end of my day through into my life. And I was just on a call just before I came on this call, and I hadn't spoken to the guy in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And I said, how are you getting on? And he said, I'm in a bit of a funk today. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. He said, like, Jesus Christ. He said, I'm on call to call to call. You know, he said, this room is starting to get me in now. He said, like, and if you ask me what I did any day last week versus any day this week, he said, I couldn't tell you which day was different because they're all melted into each other. See, because the new norm, he said, has become a whole routine now of just busy from the start of the day to the finish of the day. And again, it is about looking at the routine and how we're bringing it into. And I have found simply for me in terms of like, and I'm looking at this now to dial down, you know, I have my crew here warned, and I'm here with my wife and daughter to say, like, you know, I'll be on this call, I'll be getting off the call, I should be free by 6 o'clock. I have to then get up the mountain for 45 minutes, because if I don't, my head will explode. And that's not because I'm under pressure or because anything I'm doing today involves someone with open heart surgery on a table. It's just the pace of today, bringing that into then a kitchen environment, a dinner table environment. It's just a different scene. So I appreciate, you know, I'm looking at Mac or Kevin Mac there, and there's two young kids, and you say like, oh, Grand King, or like, oh, but that could be throwing one of the lads into the pram and just taking a walk to clear the head, to say, I'm coming down, and building that into a routine that says, I've got to mind my energy. No different than the routine I start my day with. So part of what we're going to be looking at next week as we go into this is how thoughts are triggers for emotion, and how we can control those thoughts, how we can control the triggers. So a huge part of that just for this evening is looking at how the thoughts that you're bringing with you right now will trigger the emotions that you'll bring into the rest of your evening. And we can decide how we want that to be. Now I can bring that in thinking like I'm stressed out with stuff that I still on my head for tomorrow, and I'm anxious about that and I'm trying to get it done. Or I can bookend my day. So I was talking to someone in our group of businesses this morning, and she was talking about that Sunday evening feeling, you know, the dread, the fear of like, you know, I get, you know, in her case, she was saying like, you know, her boyfriend was saying to her like, you know, you're just not yourself, like, and this isn't over this period. She's talking about a period before the lockdown. She said like, you know, my boyfriend was saying to me like, you come home Friday night wound up, Saturday you wound down and it's great and you're around, and Sunday is great, and then there's something like, there's some trigger goes off you during Sunday where you turn into another person again. And she was saying it's like, it's the fear, it's that Sunday evening feeling. And we have that in between us, a group of us have that like, it's a measure, it's that Sunday evening, that Sunday evening barometer. Like if you can check in on Sunday evening to yourself and say, yeah, Sunday evening feels as good as any other evening, and I'm feeling great about where I'm going, versus the Sunday evening that says, holy sweet God, what does that bring up for me? That feeling in the pit of my stomach or whatever. These are all the triggers that trigger emotion in us. And an emotion then determines how we behave. And of course, how we behave determines how we get results. And it's all linked back to a thought. And a thought is a physical thing. It's as simple as that. And it's like how I look at this and how I bring my thoughts to this will determine what I get from it. So the girl I was talking to this morning, we just realized as we were chatting that an awful lot of this was externalized. And the thoughts were about what other people were doing, how other people reacted, what other people said. And of course, they were all triggers for her internal thoughts, the internal triggers, the internal 60,000 thoughts a day that we have, and how we link what's happening and how we link the thoughts that we're having to those in our head that then become the trigger to say, when I hear that, this is what I think about myself. When I think of that about myself, this is how I feel about myself. When I feel about myself in this way, this is how I behave. When I behave in this way, this is how I get my results. So we can determine so much of what we create. The challenge, and the challenge for all of us, is to be on that. So I'd love to know how we're feeling out there and what kind of thoughts are going on. Macker, what are you thinking? Talk to me.
It's almost like you were reading my face.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the gang downstairs, which I can hear already. They know it's coming to Daddy Whirlwind time,
Yeah.
which means I come downstairs like a whirlwind, play all that, um, and it's exactly to your point of when is wind down, because that's hard to find, to be perfectly honest with you, because just at the moment sleep is a commodity that's rare between the two of us, and there's no real outlet, so you're up at 6 o'clock in the morning feeding them, or they're taking him out for a scoop before you even hit the desk at 8:30. So it's like a bit of a cycle. But it is that, and then it doesn't wind down then till 8:30, 9 o'clock at night by the time you've settled everything. So it is that piece of when do you both take that little bit of time to just go, almost like the breathe out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can be
And
hard.
it's shockingly hard. And I wouldn't even for one second, I've been where you've been, and I wouldn't for one second tell you what you should do. But this is what I learned through things like the 15-minute meditation relaxation. What studies will show you is that when you get into the habit of that, 15 minutes is the equivalent of nearly 2 hours sleep. So that becomes the goal to get it. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not.
I bite your hand off for that, Kinger.
Exactly. But so I'd be accused then, Kev. I have been accused in my family, like, of sleeping standing up.
I've seen you do that,
yeah. And sleeping. No, but it's like, it's literally being able to just switch off and say, right, like, I'm not needed here for this 5 minutes. This is going on around me. I can tune out of this and just re-energize, and I can recalibrate some here. And I know that in that 5 minutes, and I can do the, I'll do this at meetings, and just let it happen around you, and you just come back in, and it's just like you've plugged in, and it's like you've gone from 20% in the battery back up to 35. It's not like, oh, I went from 20% and then I took over the room. It's just like, I can just top it back in by just using simple little techniques. Breathing is another one. So I mentioned yesterday, and some of you were on the call yesterday, Wim Hof, and he's a Dutch guy. Nut job, absolute nut job. But you get over the fact that he's a nut job, and you just see he has learned a simple breathing technique that any of us on the call, looking out there at any of you, we could learn it. You can learn it in 2 minutes. Just go on the website and look at them breathing. It's about taking 30 breaths in and then holding your breath. But what happens is, in the taking in your breath and then holding your breath, you're actually oxygenizing your breath. You get a little high. You actually give yourself a little high. So these simple techniques, I realized that I never knew how to breathe. So when someone was actually showing me yoga, and I had brought this lady into her office, like I'm talking about 20 odd years ago, and she was just showing us how to breathe. And it was revolutionary. No, it was as simple as saying, take your 3 fingers like this in your right hand, and put your top finger on your belly button, and where your 3rd finger rests is kind of the midpoint of your body. So she said, focus on breathing into where your 3rd finger is. So it's just under your belly button. So when you focus on that, that means you breathe out and you get a big fat belly. She said, that's why you have a Buddha belly. That's why the Buddhas in Eastern philosophy have big fat bellies, because they breathe into their belly. Look at a cat sleeping. Breathes in. Kev, you have a new baby. Look at him breathing. And you'll see it's into his belly. But if I put a video on you breathing, it's into your chest. So because you're still unwinding your day as an adult, as a human being. No, when you start to get into the habit of doing simple things like a relaxation, you do that before you go to sleep, it means that day gets washed over. And what you find then, if I put a video on Kev, he's a big fat belly in his sleep, because he's breathing deeper, which gives him a better sleep. But what I find with most Kevs is he's stressed out of his brain till 8 o'clock right now, cope and what you cope with. You sit down then, have something to eat, have a glass of wine, watch the news and the telly, and know a bit of fucking mindless, then catch up on a bit of news and a bit of fucking mad reading before you go to bed. Go to bed full of the shite that's going on in the whole wide world. Lie down, no sense of breathing or anything, and your brain then has to work through all of that. Does that make sense?
Have you a camera in my house?
Yeah. I was talking to your wife, and Orla was saying,
Oh,
they just have a word with you. And that's what we do. So in terms of the emotion, like when you look at tonight in simple terms, just for half an hour before you go to bed, find a half an hour before you get to bed, before you get to want to be going to sleep, where you turn off the telly and turn off your phone. No, that could mean then just tidying up around the house for a quarter of an hour, getting it ready for tomorrow before you come down, putting yourself ready for bed and lying in bed. And that's giving you a half an hour mental break from being in front of a screen. Even watching something you're enjoying. So I could be watching a great comedy and go to bed feeling relaxed after it. However, my brain has still had to, and this is what they show like scientifically, my brain has still had to interpret the pixels on the screen. So my brain is still wired doing that. Now, what most people do is watch, like, and this is what I'm finding is that I'd one last look at the late night news just to see what was going on. Fucking just in time to catch Trump doing something daft, or the news saying it doesn't look like we're going to have fucking freedom from the lockdown. We go, fuck. No, you're off the bed. And our brain cannot compute the difference between a truth and a lie. It cannot it doesn't take any notice of the difference between the future, the past, or the present. So whatever you put into it, your brain then goes about unraveling this in your sleep. So simple things in terms of our dial down now would be, after this, find, if you did nothing other than find 5 minutes, Kev, to stay sitting in the room you're in now for 5 minutes before you went out into the whirlwind. So make it as if you're still on a call for another 5 minutes. But give yourself the chance to just unwind and just say, right, how am I going to be? And I go, how do I need to bring myself to this? What do I need to do? How do I need to do it? How do I need to be? And you'll find the difference between just walking out and then snapping at someone 5 minutes later because you haven't even unwound from the call you were in or what you were at. And that's the madness of what we do. And no one can understand it. No one else can understand it because no one else is doing what we're doing right now in front of a screen or carrying the work we're carrying or doing whatever we're doing. So like Margaret has the right idea, get out and walk and wind down. Fantastic. But there's others like, Claire was on the call yesterday. She's out walking at lunch hour and she uses this Zoom time to go for a walk then. But like, the amount of people I'm speaking to every day who have no routine during the day other than getting up and doing whatever work they're doing or handling however they're handling. But they've no sense of built in, yeah, I should be getting a walk for that, or I should be breaking for my lunch at this and taking a break, because their lunch is being determined by people forcing them to be on a call at a certain time. So a huge part of it is just controlling some part of your own routine to give yourself a sense of how it comes down to you.